What is up, Generals? We're back with Ultimate General Civil War, and this is the J&P Rebalance mod, Confederate Major General playthrough. We're heading into the Battle of Gaines Mill. We're going to do a quick click-through of I-Corps. We're going to take a look at my career screen. We're going to take a look at the rep rewards that I could have picked up. And we're going to take a look at 2 Corps before heading into the battle. I was not able to pick up the 2,500 Enfields that you can get here for the rep rewards. That's a shame, because the Enfields are very expensive, and that represents quite a bit of money that you can bring into the army. The Enfield's also a pretty good rifle. It's not. I think it's not good enough for its cost, which means that I would be hesitant to spend actual money on it, but I'm very willing to bring it to battle. So, there's a thought, I suppose. By comparison, I'm more than willing to march to battle, wielding captured Springfield 61s. In my opinion, the 61 is a phenomenal battle rifle, and the kind of thing you should be feeding your elite corps or troops with. So, these numbers are not super duper accurate. When we get to the end of the battle screen, you'll notice that about 1,000-ish soldiers on both sides don't show up. I'm not really sure where that comes from. Some of my units don't show up. Some of the AI's units don't show up. So they list 35 and change right now, and they list for me 42 and change. Final battle numbers at the end of the battle are going to be 34 and change for the Union and 41 and change for the Confederates. So we have quite a severe numerical advantage going into this battle, which is rare for Major General, and I think may theoretically reflect the Meatball Brigade strategy. However, that numerical advantage is somewhat misleading, as a huge portion of that doesn't actually show up until the third wave of reinforcements. Actually, no, second. Yeah, because you get a good chunk of it from the top right, and then you get a little bit. You get a little bit from the top left, and then a good chunk from the top right, and then later on, some more from the top right, some more from the top left. And the top left is pretty minimal at that point. So we're leading. So a huge chunk of the meatball stuff doesn't show up until way later into the battle. Now, in the Union's defense, they also don't get reinforcements until later in the battle. So that part is vaguely similar. I've done something to the Excel code, the configuration files going on underneath the hood. I've reactivated skirmishers. I am self-imposing on myself the rules as they occur in the most recent version of the UI AI mod, which is to say you can detach skirmishers freely and reattach them later, but it's going to be a minute before you can do it. And the rationale is there's too many situations where I need some degree of troops in a certain region, but I can't justify a brigade to do it. And additionally, there's a lot of instances where I just have to soak artillery fire with a brigade for basically no reason. So for these two reasons, for a little bit of scouting and a little bit of, literally skirmishing work or picket work, I want to bring back into the game detached skirmishers. Now, again, the major reason they were disabled in the first place is it's very easy to game countercharges by, to game incoming chargers by quickly spawning and then reforming your light companies back into the parent brigade. Or detaching your skirmishers, as the game would call it. So the problem therein is the charging logic in the code. And when an AI unit decides, hey, I'm going to do the thing and charge into melee, it's constantly updating based on any new information, whether or not it feels like it can win that charge. When you spawn and then despawn these new units, you're continuously forcing the charge logic AI to decide whether or not it wants to pursue or prosecute the charge. Now, I'm not super conversant with how the actual code works, but based on observed behavior, I'm assuming it makes a probably not random die roll, but no, it probably just makes a random die roll. It probably just makes a random die roll on whether or not, given this new data, it feels like it can successfully prosecute the charge. And Johnny and Panda have made it successfully more aggressive with iterative expansions of the rebalance mod. Part of which is that if you can trick the AI into just sort of standing there in the open and trading shots with you, nearly always the player is able to come up with better lines of fire and engage in fire fights on the player's terms, such that you'll be able to go and engage forces far in excess of your number and expect a reasonable rate of return. So the aggression has a great destabilizing effect on the player's battle lines. As you saw in my legendary campaign, I was continuously basically asking myself, what do I have to do to throw back the assault again and again and again and again and again? That was the number one question in my mind. How can I withstand the AI's crazy charges long enough to get to this point? And I'm sure you've all noticed there's some juncture wherein the AI is just beat. It throws in the towel. And it's like, all right, fam, do what you're going to do. I'm out. And that's it, right? And the AI is just like done. And then all of a sudden, then it just stands there and takes whatever you're going to dish out. And at that point in time, you're pretty much free to do whatever you want to it. Pin it in the corner, blast the crap out of it, so forth and so on. So I'm not crazy about that. But I'm also not crazy about just the disposition of my forces, the way that I have to kind of bumble along like an idiot into covered terrain or on the offensive or for an attack without access to, easy access skirmishers, when historically it was very common for them to throw forward a net of light infantry exclusively just to scout and find the enemy. And once they found them, the light companies would fold back into the parent unit. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the Reynolds Rifles Tactics infantry manual of the time, which was the predominant infantry training manual in the era, essentially trained every single infantryman as light infantry and then treated the traditional heavy infantry maneuver as simply a means to get from point A to point B. And in this era, you were starting to see, especially in Europe, thought shifting away from the massed volleys or massed serried ranks like you'd see in the height of the Napoleonic era or Frederick the Great's. That's the right guy? The Great Northern War, or any of the. I think it might be Frederick the Great. Any of those wars of the 1700s and 1800s that would have raged across Europe, where you see these massive formations of dudes in perfect formation. American generals in this era wanted to be Napoleon 2.0, and that's fine. But as the war went on, I'm nearly certain that the development of a light infantry doctrine continued to develop. Now, I'm getting way off topic, but long story short, I disabled the disabling of skirmishers with the caveat that I would not be a jerk about it, and use it to like break charges, because I think so. I agree with the objective that Johnny and Panda have with regard to forcing the player to be uncomfortable. I like the variance mod where you might get double the AI units or whatever, so that it forces you to approach these battles in a different manner. And I really think the way that they've got skirmishers handled in the in the UI/AI mod is the correct way to, from a balance perspective, kind of handle that particular issue. They do a really cool thing. So you detach your skirmishers, that part works the same as it always does, and you can always reattach later on. But for a while, the ability to reattach them has something kind of like a video game cooldown. So deploying your skirmishers is like a World of Warcraft cooldown ability. Now, unfortunately, modders don't have access to, from a code perspective, the ability to create new assets in the UI. With the exception of expanding text bubbles or increasing the amount of information players have access to. So you'll notice it was easy for them to make increased tool tabs or tool tips for weapons, but they can't add new buttons, for example, to the game. So they can't make a cooldown countdown timer thing on your detaching skirmishers or reattaching skirmishers button. So they just gray the button out, and then when it reappears, you can reattach them, and that's all she wrote. So anyway, long story short, I'm self-imposing those rules on myself. I think it's a great solution to the kind of gamey way that you can get around charges or cancel charges with skirmishers. It's already relatively easy, although less reliable, to cancel charges just by cycle. You can sort of, you trigger the same response by cycle pressing quickly, fall back, hold, fall back, hold, fall back, hold, fall back, hold. And especially if you can have a unit fall back into another unit, you can sort of like the charging unit will lose line of sight to the unit it was kind of trying to charge. And then it will typically be like, well, hold on a sec. And like that kind of gives you a great opportunity to, sort of break those charges too with the tools you've already got access to in the rebalance mod. So you don't need, I don't think, to game the system by attaching and detaching your skirmishers pretty quickly, but that's a tool that's available to you, especially as you're kind of still learning the game and that kind of deal. So what I'm doing let's talk about the actual battle now that we're 12 minutes into the freaking video and I spent forever talking about, what's going on. The broad stroke of my plan is actually a loose mirror of Lee's actual plan in the historical battle. So I went in, I looked up some research on the actual Battle of Gaines Mill. And those of you who watch my Union Major General series will remember that I loved to talk about the actual historical events rather than just the game. So I find this conflict fascinating, and I know that everyone talks about Gettysburg and everyone talks about, Grant's Wilderness Campaign or Sherman's March to the Sea, and those are all worthwhile, viable targets of conversation. But I think the 7 Days Campaign is really fantastic. I think this is Lee's second day in command of the Confederate Army, if I'm not mistaken. So I guess I forget the exact circumstances surrounding Lee taking over, but I think Joe Johnston gets wounded at some juncture, and Lee, who is at this point in time back in Richmond, takes field command. And there's a lot of really interesting, cool history that goes on with the Confederates trying to convince McClellan that there are larger or denser troop concentrations in certain places than there actually are. And so what I'm doing here, let's talk about the game for a second. We'll go back to the real battle. I have been moving my entire force over to this angle to attack the Union. And while I was waiting for the slower artillery to move up and get in position, I made a point of moving all of my other dudes around in like little loop-de-loops or curlicues. This is something that I picked up from watching War Bob. I think it's a great idea, and it's one that I'm a little mad at myself for not having thought of earlier. So an experience point is an experience point is an experience point. Stamina is one of the only experience or skill bars you can grind. You can grind shooting by being in combat. You can grind, I believe, morale by just being on the battlefield. You can grind efficiency, I think, also by being on the battlefield, or maybe firing your guns, or I'm not actually sure how you grind efficiency, maybe by killing things. So firing your guns or charging into melee is actually a dual stat gain. So there's no question that being in actual battle, being in actual firefights or combat is the most efficient way to gain stats because you gain 2 stats that way. But simply being on the battlefield doing stuff, moving around, is still gaining you stats. Stamina is a stat that gains as you move it around. So while I was moving the artillery, which is slower, into position, I was marching my brigades around, grinding out the stamina stat. The idea here is to raise the overall stat pool available to my recruiting pool to be as large as it possibly can. In this instance, I have my counter battery mission targeting Weldon's battery, or Whedon, or whatever, and he's targeting 12th Tennessee. Now, I attempted to send a group of skirmishers forward, which is 12th Tennessee's detached skirmishers, predominantly because skirmishers of all stripes and varieties take significantly reduced fire from ranged, and then this artillery piece that's being shot at me doesn't seem mega crazy super duper damaging, so it's probably a 10-pound parrot, or it's got pretty good range on it, right? So it's probably a 10-pound parrot, maybe a 3-inch. I mean, I'm not looking at a James. I'm not looking at, a 20-pound parrot or anything nuts. So I'm much more willing to absorb that fire on a detached skirmisher unit than I am anything else. What's not working out so great for me, however, is that it was targeting 12th Tennessee, and then in like an attempt to get it to target the skirmishers, I backed off 12th Tennessee, and the AI artillery unit was like, all right, dude, and then started shelling 1st Artillery, which is obviously not ideal. So I send 12th Infantry forward again, trying to be like, yo, dude, shoot me, because you were shooting me before, and it's like, no, I've got a new target. This is my new girl. I want to shoot her. I'm not entirely certain what triggers the AI to be like, well, I guess I'll shoot 12th Tennessee after all. But regardless, the rate of exchange is very heavily in my favor here. And I have to think that the specific piece of artillery that's really performing very well here is the Blake, although the James is doing well as well. And this is one of the hallmarks of this particular battle, is the counter battery mission performs exceptionally. And I'm able to send these skirmishers here to try and get around the Union position without exposing myself too much. And the reason I'm not moving on the offensive now is because I know in about 20 minutes the map opens up. The AI gets a pretty significant amount of reinforcements, and mine come in from the top left of the map and march all the way over. So they take a minute to get into position, and they're not... they're not going to be rested when they get there. I'm going to be locally outnumbered, even if maybe I have numerical superiority on the whole map. And in my trial run of this battle, they attacked very aggressively up this hill. It was a really good attack. Like it was fantastic, which is why you'll notice my army is now positioned on the northern side of the river, creek, whatever. This is probably the Chickahominy River. Again, I'll talk about the actual historical battle eventually, but this is probably the Chickahominy River that we're currently fighting over, I would imagine. And the majority, the bulk of my forces where I am trying to ask the enemy to come attack me are positioned at the top or upper slope of a hill. So the idea is that they would have to cross a river while being shot at the whole time. And then even when they tried to retreat, they would retreat over a river and continue to be shot at. So historically, General Porter was never really given the opportunity, let alone the inclination to attack the Confederate position. But it's a game, right? So my overall objective is to concentrate or to mass a larger amount of my force here My goal is to defang as much as possible the Confederate or the Union Army, shoot the cannons and so forth and so on, and then absorb whatever offensive push comes in about 5 minutes here in game. Absorb that in favorable terms, which means making them cross rivers or fight uphill, or ideally both. And then once I've sort of bled them from their willingness to launch an offensive, do so myself. Extreme flank around the Union right, and then just push basically down their line towards the swamps to the left of Boatswain's Hill. So left, which I presume is south and west, I would imagine. A lot of the actual offensive work is going to be done by Second Corps here, and the rationale in my mind is that that's a corps I can lead the attack with big meatball brigades. I can get right up in the grill of the Union. They can just be right up in their teeth, firing point-blank musket fire. And the rationale, again, remains that I'm a little less concerned about casualties in units that large. So if I take losses in a unit of 1,400 men, and I dip below 1,000 men, which I will in these battles, if I try and grind it out with these bigger Confederate or Union brigades, I will drop below 1,000 men, and that's a significant portion of high experienced troops that I'm having to replace in a 2,200 man meatball brigade, which will ultimately grow to 2,500 later on. I'm less concerned. Now, some of these units drop, like I think the hardest hit meatball brigade drops to 1,800. So that's a significant loss to those guys. But they're fresh rookies going into this battle. They've got guns that I've picked up off the army or don't care about, which is to say smoothbores, percussions or rebores or whatever. And the entire time, the Union's wasting its ammunition and trading blows with units that I charitably don't actually care about. I care about them insofar as I want them to develop and grow into more experienced elite rifle brigades. But they're not needed yet in that function. And eventually they're going to get experience and bleed down to maybe 1,000 men or something. I'll start giving them good weapons, and then I'll create new meatball brigades and so forth and so on. I have seen Warbob's videos where he will routinely delete his existing units to feed them back into the recruit pool. And then it's wild. It's wild to see him create whole armies of 2-star units. It's crazy. Now, he's doing this in the AI UI mod, not the rebalance. So the scaling is a little more beneficial because the AI is capped at 2,950, which is still big. But I mean, when you're 2,500 and they're 2,950, it doesn't feel like as much of a difference. You almost feel like on par. So the leading edges of the Union probe hit my line here and pretty rapidly kind of fall apart. You'll notice I don't actually have, but I might have 2 detached skirmishers out on the field, and for the most part the army is just the regular army. I'm still waiting for reinforcements to get into position. I'm continuing to extend my flank with light units or dragoons. And I'm waiting for Second Corps to arrive. And when they arrive, they're going to be the hammer to I Corps' anvil. And additionally, where I feel safe to do it, I'm taking my units and I'm having them march around a little bit. I'm grinding that stamina stat. I'm leaving solid front line, and I'm willing to run a short distance to get these units in position for an ideal fire exchange. In the case of looks like 10th Georgia, for example, they're in urban terrain. Well, a house. I mean, they're on a farm. They're not in it enough. I do need to shift them over, and I don't, and that's on me. I do need to shift them over more than I do, but I got 6th North Carolina coming up over here, and this is the benefit of this kind of a strategy. 6th North Carolina is going to be able to shoot at who is this? Martindale? Yeah, I mean, the Union Brigade that I'm shooting at, the only one. It looks like Martindale, but I've talked about this before. So I use HitFilm to do my videos. Man, I'm all over the place today. I I use HitFilm for my editing software. I love it. I think it's a great piece of software. It's free. Yeah, you got to give them some personal information or whatever, but like if it's free, you're the product, right? So whatever. So the screen that I'm editing on, I can watch the playback because clearly I'm watching the playback. I'm recording the audio in Audacity. It's probably 80% the size of what you see deployed, and I already have an ultra wide monitor playing this at probably 1080p. It can't be more than that. It's got to be 1080p. So like this is perfectly legible to me when I'm playing the game, but now, sorry guys, I'm old. I'm not old. I'm just, I just can't squint hard enough to read that. So it looks like Martindale. What's really blowing my mind, and this must be, is it because I have a couple of detached skirmishers? I don't know. But I did a trial run of this battle, the night before, and they came at me with like a division and 2 skirmishers who did a great job tanking a lot of fire. The 2 skirmisher units took up a truly phenomenal, this is a mistake on my part. So I try to get sneaky and get a couple of shots off on that cannon unit. And then every musket in the Union Army for about a mile in every direction seems to be all right, we're going to shoot the crap out of those guys. So that sucks, obviously. So they came in with a division and they really, it turned into a knockdown drag out. I pulled it out of the thing and I finished the battle. I should have recorded it. I would have been fine with just that being the battle and calling it a day. And that one was, total Union destruction, and a Confederate loss total of around 8,000, which I would have been fine with. It's a lot relative to my army going into this battle. 8,000's 20-ish% casualties, which sucks, obviously, but welcome to Rebel, where casualties are higher. And so, yeah. We have some counter battery here going on, and he's shooting, I think it's a James or a Blake unit. I think it's a James unit. He's shooting a James unit, and I constantly debate while this is going on, because remember, this is at 2 times playback. I constantly debate pulling the James back. But the thing is if I do, he's just going to shoot the Blake. Or maybe I even think about pushing my 3-inchers forward and being hey, shoot them. They're more common. I have 3-inchers for days and I don't really have a lot of Jameses or Blakes. I think about this. But then I look at the rate of casualties going in versus the rate of casualties going out. And I figure if I take one of these guns and move them, that's at least 2 minutes of in-game time where that gun is not shooting on something, and probably more, honestly. And we're killing them pretty quick. So I figure just suck it up and blast them down. And that works out. I lose probably 30 artillerymen in that exchange, but I don't lose a gun, which is the important part as far as I'm concerned. So, you're going to just this is not super duper exciting to watch. So, I'm shifting the artillery to the Confederate right, Union left. And the intention is to bring it more central to the Union line, because ultimately I'm going to attack laterally across the Union position from northwest of their relative current position, and then just northeast, and then moving southwest along their line downward. And you can see I'm starting to maneuver my guys in a position to do that. The reinforcements specifically, although not too much longer, I'm going to move 2nd South Carolina and 5th. I can't see where they're from right now. The 5th Infantry, whatever state they're from. Right around now, though, is when 2nd Corps comes in. So I get pretty excited. I move the 1st and 2nd Division online. I pull all the specialist units out. So I've got a couple of irregulars along with the army, as well as 7th and 8th Field Artillery, and they're not gonna obviously advance in line, but I'm gonna put all of 2nd Corps' 2nd Division into the attack, along with the 5 brigades currently forming up to go into the attack. And then 1st Division's mission is going to be to secure McGee Hill, and then kind of advance along that lower lateral position. So I don't know if lateral is the correct line. You'll kind of see what I'm doing, but there's a line of trees behind the Union position that is like perfect as a route of advance, to kind of like counterflank against their positions down here on the trenches. So yeah, I'm starting to shimmy those guys into the woods. Like the Georgia Regiment or brigade has taken pretty heavy losses, but I think like we've still traded better than we've gotten. We've shot the ever-living crap out of Martindale, and I'm so like flustered from a gaming perspective because in one version of this battle, they had a devastating and very aggressive division attack in line. It might have been double line, but it was still 4 or 5 brigades. And in here, they've got like one anemic, kind of almost lazy push, and I'm able to, blast the ever-living shit out of their artillery. And I get bloodied for it, but I lose maybe 1 gun in this whole battle. So it's kind of, what's happening. I'm also continuing wherever I feel safe to do so, to exercise my men, grind that stamina stat. I've got the Tennessee light infantry. So these are not the Virginia sharpshooters. These are guys with just regular Whitworths, not scoped. And they're down here blasting the crap out of Taylor. And this is Virginia. Never mind. This is Virginia. They're unopposed. I don't understand. Like Taylor's like, okay, yeah, just feel free to shoot my flank. Like, come get me, dude. So and I don't know. I get elements of the 3rd Texas and 11th Mississippi into position, and they start eating artillery fire. I'm not advancing with those 2 brigades north of them, because fire coming out of trenches is actually it's pretty rough. I don't know if they removed the damage output debuff or something, but it's not a good time getting shot at from units in trenches, which honestly is probably how it should be, because there's in the vanilla game, there's really just no reason at all ever to use the trenches, which just seems silly. So they're good entrenchments now. They can't do anything to solve the problem of your increased frontage allows more units to shoot at you than maybe you otherwise would be able to take. But I mean, okay, whatever. I deploy my units here kind of laterally against their position, and their reinforcements are all kind of bunched up. They've got this huge artillery unit, 423 guys, and they're starting to blast my units, but they're not hitting all that hard, which makes me think it's, again, a 10-pounder Parrot or something. So we keep trying to bleed Taylor here. The irregulars, some of the detached skirmishers, and the 1st Virginia sharpshooters. And here comes the first, balls-out charge of the battle. And this is a good one. This is a pretty solid thing. And I hope I don't do... I hope... In the moment, I'm pretty sure what I was telling that unit to do was to retreat through the line. I hope I don't do anything dumb and try and re-get it in the unit. Yeah, so I just let it retreat through the line and kind of do the thing. And so they stop their charge, and then I blast the shit out of them. And you can do this with dedicated skirms too. In fairness, you can. So we shoot the shit out of Taylor, and again, there's 7,500 Union infantry just sort of dirtling around their cannon there, waiting for, I don't know, something. And in the trial battle, they came screaming at me, and they were super aggressive, and like nothing's changed except for the fact that I had some skirmishers. So I don't know, maybe this might be too powerful a tool in the Union, in the player's toolbox. I'm not really sure, because it feels frustrating. I take these massive butcher's bills if I don't have the skirmishers, because I can't see anything, and I dirtle into ambushes like a dumbass, and all kinds of stuff. And then like, maybe it's because my counter battery was really good in this battle. I don't really know. Like, sometimes it's just the opposite. Sometimes I smash the shit out of them and they can't get anywhere. One interesting thing, Getty, or Gertie, I think it's Getty, this battery here, this 400 gun battery, is like perfectly placed, because I can't get to it. I can't get to it with my rifled guns. It's too far back from the front line, and I can't advance in that position. So they're blasting the crap out of Hayes, like, and he's having a bad time. But I can't get to it, and it's really cool. Like, it's probably unintentional, but I can't get to it. So Second Corps gets online and launches themselves into the attack. And in a lot of ways, this mirrors the Confederate plan on the day of. Now, I say that, historically, Lee had units directly in front of the Union position to like pin them in place. He was continuously, on an operational level and also at the tactical level, continuing to shoot for finding the exposed Union right flank. He always wanted to do this. So we're doing a lot of mimicry here to what Lee wanted to do. We're hitting his left flank. Interestingly, the battle at Gaines Mill actually represents the single largest Confederate attack of the war. It combined 57,000 men all at once. And I'm surprised by that. And I don't know, like, this is what Wikipedia says about the thing. And I know any of you can go read the wiki too. All right, fine, right? But it provides a really cool level of context for what we're doing here in the game. So there's a pretty cool opportunity here, or a pretty cool thing here. Taylor charges, and because these big meatball brigades are, big, they're 2,000 men or whatever, instead of, like, terrifiedly running away with my 1,400 man, micro brigades, I'm like, nah, man, bring it. And I hit them with 3 rookie brigades. So 3-on-1, 6,000 men versus just shy of 3,000 men. So 2-to-1 in terms of numbers, but 3 brigades versus 1. And like, unsurprisingly, he can't handle it. Plus, there's the fact that my dudes are swinging smoothbores or rebores, which have pretty decent melee stats. Well, you know what? Actually, the rebore doesn't. The rebore is like, it's fine. It's like it's okay. It's not great. But the percussion musket actually has good melee stats. We do this a couple times where, like, they continuously, quote unquote, reoccupy the trenches, and while the sprites are still working their way into position, they blast the ever-living shit out of me as if they were in the trenches, and it's fine. It's a thing that I've known the game is going to do for a while now, so I've just kind of gotten used to it. But the alternative, the point that I'm fine with it, right, is that these units take, like, in my opinion, outsized amounts of morale damage from the fire they receive in trenches. I don't know why that occurs the way it does, but yeah, it does. So I don't really ever have a great deal of worry about getting someone out of trenches as long as I can shoot at them obliquely. And there's not really any reason why I feel like that's better or worse, except for the fact that it's like just doubling down on the "you're being flanked" fire penalty. At this point, the Confederate Army, in my opinion, has the Union Army on the run. We've outflanked their position. The AI will not probably effectively redeploy to meet this new threat coming at them from their, like, perfect right angle. What's that word? Parallel? No, it's the same line. Tangent. Sure. It's probably not. It's a right angle, right? And I'm trying to think of what that would be. Perpendicular? Yeah, sure. Like I'm in an advanced stats program, but we don't do geometry. So let's go with tangent, right angle tangent. It's not the word I'm looking for. I think it might be perpendicular, but whatever. You get the point. We have crossed their T, to use naval parlance, and we are gunning right down their gullet. And the AI will just continue to be rolled up. I am allowing the majority of the, we'll call it messy fighting, to be handled by Second Corps. And I am maneuvering, you'll notice here on the Confederate right, Union left, or Union center, I'm maneuvering more and more assets into this position directly across from the Union position. And the reason I'm doing that is that one of the things that I fell trapped to when I played this battle before, and this is my last playthrough of the game, is I'd said, oh, I'm going to flank the Union position, and that's all I did. I just flanked the Union position. And so I would keep pushing them back on this narrow frontage here, but they had a safe place to go retreat to. They had a general, not the one under Martin Dale or whoever. But there's one that I can't see his name. It's probably Porter, but who knows? There's another one here. There's a second one, and the first one's gone. Anyway, they had a flag to go defend. They had a general to go retreat to. They had artillery and supply wagons. Like, I'm just continuing to condense them down onto their safe recovery place. So one of the things I wanted to do is, once I felt secure in my ability to prosecute an offensive maneuver along one front, is I needed to deploy forces in order to hit them along a different front. And this is the more straightforward, like straight on kind of front. But the plan is only to hit them once I've cleared, not even hit them really. It's once my flanker forces scare someone out of trenches. So Chapman, for example, is occupying these trenches here, and I want to shoot him enough from the flanks so that he's like, maybe not, and gets out of those trenches. And when he does, then and only then am I going to move forward with my dudes on this more like front approach. And the intention there is that it's like offensive defensive maneuvering. Like, they have to come to my guns if they want to get in their trenches versus me coming to them. But they're going to keep doing it because the trenches to them are safe. So I'm only going to move up and block their access to these trenches when they're not occupied. And then if I move up to, like you'll see here in a second, I get a little dumb with 6th North Carolina. I move them up 2 forward, and they start getting shot by Newton. And so, yeah, they get shot by Newton, and it's not a great time. Also, what we're doing, this the second sort of thing that we're trying to do is, this is the tree line on the bottom of the screen that I was talking about, is this line of trees here where the flag ends up kind of being. Everything south of that is swampland, which just destroys your condition, and it sucks up morale just moving, and it drains and drains and drains these units. And so 6th North Carolina is being shot at by Newton. He's not even being shot at by, he's being shot at by Griffin as well, but Newton's just reaping a toll. Look at this. 6th North Carolina is getting hammered. I should be pulling him back. And when it finally occurred to me, like after he'd gone under 1,000, I was like, shit, that was my fault for, the thing. And like I realized, like, I'm not gonna kick Newton out of there for a minute, so I got to get them back. And like, there's an argument to be made, like, oh, what about threat saturation? What if you hit that front trench line with like 3 units to every one of theirs? And that could work. But you would eat a lot of casualties in the process, which is not to say that Second Corps isn't eating a lot of casualties here in this process. However, rebalance mod. Some degree of casualties are simply going to happen. So I get done with 6. I pull them back. We have another great countercharge here moment here with 18th Texas. Or maybe not. So there's a moment somewhere in here, maybe not that one. Someone charges, we end up getting in a melee. It's great. And I feel so much more willing to go into melee with these bigger units. Yeah, like at that point I'm like, man, why haven't I gotten 6 out of there yet? Like I get it. But they need to not. So this is the goal. The goal for me is to get all of their army out to the south on these swamps without triggering this flag. Which is obviously not super duper easy to do. I want them to squirt south into the swampland so I can get them all. But I don't want to trigger the flag in the process, because this is one of those battles that it ends when you hit the flag. And I want to spend every second I can on the battlefield fighting this out. I've technically already won. You can win the battle with just one of these flags. You don't have to get all 3. Anyway, so what I'm trying to do here is continuously apply pressure. And these meatball brigades, who are in fairness taking a lot of losses, but I mean they're at point blank range, trading musket fire with huge AI brigades. And while my dudes are brand new green rookies with Springfield 42s or percussion muskets, these are 2-star brigades with 1861s, or maybe Enfields or Lorenzas, or whatever they've got. I mean, like in the rebalance, the table of weapons the AI has access to is like quite a bit broader versus what you see in the vanilla game. In the vanilla game, there's like a really tight like band of what they're going to use, and that's pretty much it. And then in the rebound, like they'll use all kinds of random ass shit. So like good and bad in that regard. Like it'd be better, well, from a player perspective, if they kept on dropping the same thing, because then you'd have enough to equip brigades. Like I think, and like you'll see in about 20 minutes, I think we get like 800 Lorenzas and 600 Enfields and I don't know, 2,000 1861s. Like it's pretty good. Wish I got a few more captures, but it's fine. I need to probably charge into melee more to get those kind of things. But the point is, I'm trading very effectively. Like these men to me cost basically nothing, and admittedly to the AI they also cost nothing. But they've got 2 things that are important to me. 1, their stat generation, and 2, they have 1861s. So now we're getting to the point where a big element of my attacking force is now going to stand in the tree line facing south, keeping the AI in the swamp. And I can trust the AI to keep trying to rally around the flag. So that's what I'm going to encourage it to do. And so there's going to be some changes in terms of what units go where. Up until now, I have largely been content to let percussion musket and smoothbore units largely occupy, just whatever portion of the line they end up being in. Now that I am no longer on a primarily offensive mandate, which is to say point blank, like aggression is actually good, get up in their face, that kind of thing. I'm cycling units that currently have percussion muskets out. And I'm cycling units that have rebores or 41s or whatever in. Anything with 400 range is basically what I'm trying to do. A note, about that, actually. I noticed that the units that had 400 range rifled muskets, or even just smoothbore muskets, had a higher firearm stat at the end of this battle than those units that had a 300 range percussion musket. So, I mean that makes it's obvious, right? Like longer range means they were able to fire more in the course of the battle, which means they were able to grind more stats. Okay, sure, pretty obvious. It's like pretty clear what that's supposed to mean. But I thought it was fascinating. It was interesting, which encourages me basically to take these meatball brigades and give them, a 400 range gun as soon as possible. I don't even care if it's accurate. Like, kills are great, but really I just need them shooting at shit to get those stats up. More exercise here for the brigades. And as we close in on the army, there's like one cool trick that is about taking up position on this flag, on this line of trees, but not tripping the flag. And then there's one dumb thing I do. So I get the 2nd Tennessee Dragoons. I want them to go steal some supply wagons. And in the process of moving to do that, units that are routing, deroute and get these volleys off that just are brutal. Like, they take a third of the numbers of 2nd Dragoon, and it's going to be expensive to replace. It's just me being dumb. It's just me being dumb. So it is what it is. But I'm exercising these units, trying to get that stamina stat leveled up, and then I'm just blasting the crap out of the Union, trying to force them back into the swamp. And we'll go ahead and do that. That's basically the plan for the course of the day. So I looked up the map for this battle historically, and this is actually a decent, recreation of that map, of the actual battle. Interestingly, Jackson and D.H. Hill's major attack was targeted towards Boatswain's Wood, but instead of like flanking against it, they just attacked directly straight on, and then there were some forces that attacked from a flank as well. And the actual attack itself didn't really begin until 7 at night, so you'll notice that it's 1940 and change right now, so we're not actually all that far off. Again, the developers have done a pretty good job, at least in this battle, of getting you a close approximation of the historical engagement, which I think is just so cool. I think it's so cool. So let's talk about some of the things that I think are really cool about the macro campaign of the 7 days battle. It doesn't really matter, like, for the purposes of this discussion, how you feel about the righteousness of the Southern cause. Objectively, it was treasonous rebels, like it's literally in their name, Johnny Reb. But there's some brilliant tactics and strategy going on here. Some great, there's some deception. There's some just fantastic stuff that, mimics in a lot of ways the tools and tricks, the guile necessary to be a good combat leader. By which I mean, and I forget the name of the general, and I'm not going to tab out of the game to go look it up, but one of the generals leading into, who is this? Here it is, John Magruder, so I did look it up, never mind. So Magruder needed to convince McClellan that he had way more troops than he actually did. And he knew where Union pickets were stationed. I don't know how, a good recon or something, the value of good recon, right? He knew where Union pickets were stationed. So he had lots of little task forces, small ones, make really loud movements. They would just bang, bang, bang their horns or their drums or whatever. They would, have way more torches than would be normally appropriate for that number of men, and they would spread them out in big numbers. And so, or not big numbers, but wide spacing, right? So at night, all you can really do to determine the visuals of a formation is look at the torches, I guess, or the campfires. And then you can take the sound and kind of extrapolate from there, what you think a force likely is. So Magruder did that all up and down his position, and he pinned 60,000 Union soldiers of McClellan's command in place, watching, I think, a quarter of their number. And he freed up a little over half of Lee's overall 90,000 man command in and around Richmond to take part in this particular battle and seek to turn Porter's flank and force him and McClellan eventually back out of the peninsula. And he's successful. So here's where I screw up with Tennessee. So when I make the move to go for the supply wagons, it's pretty open for the Tennessee Dragoons, but what I don't count on is Butterfield here, retreating from all the artillery and infantry in the north, and I'm kind of going in for the killing blow here. So Butterfield retreats, as does maybe Griffin. I think Griffin might be who gets the shots off actually. Yeah, it's Griffin. So, like he just gets this great volley off on me, and I'm in swamp. I've got no cover. I'm moving slow. Like, it's just brutal. And then I get a second volley. I don't know from whom. Looks like just Griffin again. So like a third of my command destroyed because I just can't get these damn supply wagons. The unit routes. Like, it's just a bad time, and it's completely just, I don't know, dumb luck, bad luck on my part, my fault, I'm sure of it. Like, it's user error, no question. I'm trying to pin these Union units with the light elements in the swamp because they're going to take a little bit less of a penalty moving in the swamp than like a heavy unit might, or certainly artillery. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to not really give them anywhere else to retreat. I want them boxed up in a nice little bucket, where like there's nowhere good for them to go. But because I haven't tripped this flag, they're going to keep attacking towards it. They're going to keep trying to capture the flag, but I'm Tish. So, like, I can use that. So as long as I don't trip the flag, I know where they're going to try and go. And I've got however long I've got in the battle, a couple hours or whatever, to try and, like, fight it out. Like an hour. So that's what I'm going to try and do. So Lee is new to command in the historical battle. And I don't know if he's like that new. I don't know if he's like brand new. I read this somewhere in the article. So, yeah, I can't find it right now, unfortunately. I should have called this off. So I do know that in the course of the 7 days battles, somewhere in there, Joe Johnston is like loses command of the Confederate Army and Lee takes over. And it's maybe because he's wounded, probably because he's wounded, because I'm pretty sure up until that point in time, Joe Johnston's been a more or less successful a general. So Lee is aggressive. And this is one of the great battles that illustrates what he can do when he has the initiative. Another one would be Second Bull Run. One of the battles that illustrates like how Lee's aggression can kind of be used against him, however, is Gettysburg, where Meade like continuously denies Lee the initiative, and more importantly denies Lee like an obvious like knockout punch. He almost gets it. Lee almost gets it at a little round top. That should have, like, you look at the order of battle going into that engagement, and you know, if it wasn't for Joe Chamberlain, like, I don't know, I think he would have had it. But so Lee never gets his knockout punch, and Lee never gets his high ground, and Lee at Gettysburg gets all aggressive, and he's all like, we're gonna win. We've marched all this way. We're gonna do the thing. We got to get our decisive battle. And like, I get it. From an economic standpoint, every day the war goes on, the Union gets stronger and the Confederacy gets weaker. Lee needs a political victory. He doesn't need a strategic victory, would be a political victory. He doesn't need a battlefield victory. Insofar as like total conquer Washington kind of, VE Day, destroy the Germans kind of victory. He needs America to get so frustrated of the expense to be like, all right, fuck it. Or he needs the British or the French to be like, yeah, I guess we need Southern cotton after all. Like no one counted on, I don't know why. They're like, aha, King Cotton, we're going to get him. And then the Europeans are like, I mean, I guess we'll just go to Egypt, whatever, it's fine. And then they're like, fuck, we didn't think of that. So I'm massively oversimplifying the situation. But I mean, that's more or less how it went down. So he needs a political victory. So, I'm gonna be a little apologetic for the aggression at Gettysburg that otherwise in my mind seems unwarranted by the battlefield, but whatever. But like 7 Days Battle, and Second Bull Run are both great examples of what Robert Lee with the initiative can really accomplish. So as less and less of my army are required to fight the actual battle, I'm exercising my command. I'm giving it move orders just to keep it moving the entire time and keep grinding away that stamina stat. When I have these kinds of situations, what I've found is easier than kind of manually clicking through and doing all the curly cues like Warbob does, which makes sense because Warbob can do it on a very small front and keep his troops kind of concentrated, which is good. Like here where I don't feel like I need to, I don't worry about it so much. But I did earlier. You noticed I was kind of just doing little loop-de-loops. Here I just pick some terrain feature, and I have all the soldiers march to it. And then when I get there, I pick some other terrain feature, and I have all the soldiers march to that one. And then when they get there, I have them march back to the first one, and rinse, wash, repeat, so forth and so on. And it's the same effect, but it takes less time for me per click. And this is only effective in these huge battles, obviously, or towards the tail end of that battle when I command, just an uncrushable battlefield dominance. So we inflict 73% Union casualties and suffer 15% on our own. In terms of numbers, it's about 4-1, which is not like game breaking, right? But it's Rebel. Rebel has just higher casualties. Just a metric shitload of promotions. Getting to colonel has never really been a problem for me. We get one guy who goes from captain all the way to colonel, which is fantastic. Actually, I think we do it a couple times. Like 2 guys go all the way from captain to light colonel. No one goes from captain to full bird, or I guess in this case 3-star colonel. And I don't think anyone makes it to a higher rank beyond colonel. We capture some Parrots and 10-pound ordnances. We capture 1,800 1861s and several Lorenzes and Enfields, and then some supply wagons that are of middling levels of full. So overall, I think we do really well here. We get Colonel Hill, who was a major general historically at this battle, but whatever. First VA sharpshooters picks up their 2nd star. So this is a unit that is intended to be a sniper unit that has been denied being a sniper unit because they were literally 5 men over strength or 7 men over strength or, whatever. So this light infantry unit that is intended to be a light infantry unit has been using the scope Whitworth because, someone should. So finally, I can give the sniper unit the sniper rifle. And I figure the light infantry should get the regular Whitworth. Why not? So I've been seeing good returns on medicine. So I think I put the points in. Excuse me. I think I put the points in medicine. I don't know. Yeah, everybody for the most part that saw the battlefield gets gets stars, with the exception of the irregulars, many of whom didn't see a great deal of actual combat. Look at some of these stamina gains on these units. That's crazy. Now, at the same time, look at some of the casualties suffered. I mean, a lot of these units started the battle at 2,200 men and are now, 21st Kentucky, it's 1431. The South Carolina and Mississippi militias are both big casualty figures, like 500-ish men. So it's a lot, but they've gained a metric shitload of stamina points. And there is, I think, some argument to be made to just delete these units and pull them back into the manpower pool. So I pick up both of the Enfields here because I'm not really all that worried about 3-inch ordnance, and I'm not really all that worried about 10-pound Parrots, because I feel pretty good about the counter battery mission of the Army. 1 point in econ, 1 point in medicine. I feel like medicine is this great stat. So we'll go from there. So then we'll take a look at the reserve pool, 4 wounded in the course of the battle, which is interesting because historically the Confederates had 4 brigadier or higher level officers wounded in the battle. So that's pretty cool. And actually, let me take a look at this really quick. The Confederates suffered 8,000 losses in this battle. Most of those wounded, though, 6,402 wounded and a little under 1,500 killed. So, the casualty figures in this game are like astronomically out of whack with those suffered historically. So in the game, the Union suffered 25,320 losses. Historically, they suffered 6,837. A little like 3,000 of that wounded, and then 2,800 of it captures. So there was a lot of retreating here, and units got captured by the Confederates, which fed into the losses there. Only 900 KIA at this battle for the Union. So I assume, a lot of these are wounded, so probably only I say, let's call it 8,000 dead, and the remainder captured or wounded. It's still crazy. So I'm not going to subject you guys to all the camp as I try and clean the Army up afterwards and get ready for Malvern Hill. But you get the idea. And we're going to break the Army into 2 different corps commands of 18 brigades going to Malvern. We're going to try and see if we can't farm out all 4,200 of those Enfields and get those Springfields homes as well. We want this Army as well equipped as possible and within reason as big as possible, because the bigger we are, the bigger they are, and the bigger they are, the more guns they give us. So, I hope you guys are having a great week. I'm busy as all hell, but honestly happy as a clam, and see you guys at Malvern Hill. But until then, this is Fiasco, signing out.